I have my platform, or the podium.
Okay. Kasamahan is a space that is ever changing. As someone who has been in this space for a few years now, how have you seen Kasamahan change? How do you plan to adapt to the changes, and what changes would you like to see in the space moving forward?
Yeah, being, in this position has allowed me to see through different generations of Kasamahan and especially through Daro, I've been able to learn about, what this space was like even before my time here. And it's changed in a lot of ways, I think. Some for the better, some, can be improved upon. But I truly hope one of the goals that I have for this position is to make sure that the community that I first felt when I entered this space remains. Because sometimes, when things are hard or when we have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of other obligations, we tend to lose that sense of togetherness. Kasama, right? But I truly hope that, with the waves that this organization goes through, that no matter who's in this board, because it's always changing, no matter what positions or roles that you may play in this board, that community is still central, and that we still feel that when we need it most, and that we can fall back on it when we need it most.
You've been on board for 4 years. Three years. You've been on board for 3 years, and you've grown a lot as a leader. Can you describe some of the changes you've been through as a leader and what hardships, or not hardships, but what you've learned that has created you as the leader you are today?
Definitely think that I am in a much different place than I was when I was a freshman. And I'm very grateful that I've been able to grow in these past 3 years here. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is to fall back on the support system that I've built here, and to really, believe that I'm not going through this alone, that, we all go through this together. We always have it at the end of our events, right? Isan Goksan. We always say, one fall we all fall, one rise we all rise. And sometimes in my position, it's been difficult to carry the load. And I've always felt like I'm the only one falling. But over time, I've learned that, I'm in this together with my fellow board members, with membership under our care, and that I don't have to go through this situation alone. And I think that's really helped me grow as a leader in the space and just a person in general, knowing that and being able to ground myself in that when things get hard.
You mentioned how much you've grown over these past 4 years. Using that, how would you help facilitate the growth of others, not just on the e-board, but also in the board?
So I think my experiences in this space serve as, in the same way that I've gained wisdom from people who've come before me, the people that I've served with, my greatest hope is that it doesn't end with me and it doesn't die off with me, that I get to pass this on to the people that, I hope to work with next year, and the people that will come after me that I might not even know, but, as long as that precedent and that, everything that has carried us forward thus far will continue to carry this organization forward. I think an advantage is I've seen both, Kasamahan at its best and at its worst moments, and we've been able to, reflect on these things, whether board meetings or just conversations like between directors and membership. But to really just, you know, acknowledge like this is what happened and not dwell on it, but rather think about how do we move forward from this and like using that experience to shape, you know, how are we going to act like moving forward.
Imagine this, it's involvement fair for fall 2026. Hundreds of new prospective members fled to the Kasamahan table. As the face of the org, how would you describe Kasamahan to them?
Well, it's funny because I feel like every time we're at a roller there, we always have that spiel that we give like, we're the biggest org on campus. Like, here are our 4 pillars, here's, you know, our like spiel about the org to like make it digestible for, you know, the people who are coming to this space and like without overwhelming them with like, I guess, all that there is to it because, you know, there is a lot to this space, more than we talk about in the more than we talk about, you know, even at like our general meetings. But I think, you know, one way that we can grow is to not only, you know, talk about these are the pillars of our organization, this is like, you know, some of the big seasons or events that we do, but like what that means to us. And like, you know, you can only go so much into depth because it's like involvement fair and you got a minute to like pitch the organization to the, but like, you know, I think it goes a long way to first of all connect with the people that you meet, you know, really get to know them and like why they might be interested in this org, and then connect that to your experience in this org, you know, in an efficient way, but you know, still, you know, giving depth to like all of the events, all of the aspects of our organization.
Much like Iparaluban, board will look toward you to be a pillar of strength, and they will lean on your guidance and they will lead you. How will you continue to show up not just for them but for yourself?
I think back to what I said earlier, it really just comes to, you know, even though it is a big responsibility to support my fellow board members and to, you know, take on that load with them, but to really just ground myself in, you know, what has brought me here, what has kept me here, what brings me joy, and if you're curious about that, I would say that what brings me joy is to see the impact that this space has left on people, and what brings me the most, sorry, I'm like blanking on words, but what brings me the most joy is the people that I met in this space, the connections that I've met, and you know, seeing that even if it's just one person, it's just one event, that it's changed the entire trajectory of, you know, how they participate, how they engage in this work. Like, for me, first gen, like, if it weren't for the welcoming community that I came into, I don't think I would be in this position right now. I don't think I would have gone on this crazy journey of like serving on board and like, you know, trying new things, if it weren't for the people who helped guide me along.
Kasamahan is a diverse space. Our members are all, bless you. Our members are all coming from different backgrounds and experiences and are at different points of cultural exploration. Some of us aren't even Filipino. Kasamahan has also been a space that sometimes gets criticized for being quote-unquote cliquey. So with that in mind, how do you plan to foster and maintain an environment that is both welcoming and inclusive for all kinds of members?
Yeah, I think that is a really big point that like, we always grapple with every year. But to foster that welcoming environment and that safe and brave space for all to participate, it starts with the leaders in the space. It starts with the people who have been in this space for years, you know, the ones who have returned, the ones who mentor the people on years and especially the people on executive board. You know, we always talk about at the beginning of the year with executive board our inclusivity strategies and just, you know, not only like talking about it like in in our spring retreat or first meeting, but like continuing to like look back on that and like reminding ourselves of that as we like move through events, as we move through like this space. I think like inclusivity looks like, you know, the language that we use with others, making sure that we are inclusive to people of all walks of life, and you know, Kasamas, whether they're Filipino or not, whether they're from the mainland or not, or from the diaspora, making sure that their experiences are validated and welcome, and you know, they help shape this organization and make it whole, or like more encompassing.
As ED, as mentioned, you will be tasked with overseeing the executive board. With that said, board is full of 18, 20 people, all different kinds of people and personalities. How do you plan to manage any miscommunications or misunderstandings that might arise because there are so many varied personalities?
I think one thing, like just first of all, it's important to acknowledge that like all of the people who come on board, they come from, you know, different backgrounds, different, they hold different beliefs, they have different, you know, reasons as like to why they brought them here. And you know, while that does make board, you know, more diverse in that sense, you know, it can also lead to conflict and miscommunication. And I think just making sure that that safe and brave space doesn't only apply to membership, but it also applies to board, and you know, establishing very early on, you know, active or like open communication and welcoming all board members' ideas, and really understanding like each other's perspectives to figure out like what is the most ideal choice that we should make for our organization. When it comes to miscommunication, I think it's very common in like this space. I think just reiterating that I think just reminding board again to be open-minded and to be, I guess like not only give ourselves grace, but give each other grace. You know, sometimes we are not working to our fullest capacity, and sometimes that leads to conflict. Sometimes that leads to miscommunication. Sometimes it leads to hardship. But just, you know, understanding that, and again, less focusing on like what has happened and more focusing on, okay, what do we do moving forward? How can we prevent this from happening again? Yeah. Hey.
Hello. I'm going to be asking you a few more questions, but we often talk about on board when we have our board hats on and when we have them off. Being executive director, like Sam had mentioned previously, it's a position where a lot of people look up to you. General members recognize you as executive director. How do you find that balance between having your board hat on and having it off in order to prevent burnout, but also in order to humanize yourself and to be able to have that space to breathe and really take care of your own needs?
I think it is very important to maintain that professionalism when like the situation calls for it, and like, you know, especially when it comes to like logistical matters or like the way that we present ourselves to membership. It is important to know that, you know, we can be like ourselves, we can be friendly, but you know, we should just be mindful of the way that we behave in front of membership and the way that we carry ourselves, because you know, as both of you mentioned, not only to me but to the entirety of the executive board, membership looks to us. They're going to follow what we do, and they're going to observe us intently, and so we have to set that example for them in the ways that we carry ourselves throughout this space. But I do think that humanity part is also very important, and that's why I stress, like, both in my platform and my speech, that, you know, we are Kasamas, we are people on board, we have responsibilities and positions, but, you know, under that, we are still people. We're still people with relationships in this space. We are still people who feel things and who love and who have, you know, all of the good things that come with, like, being human. And so just, you know, still keeping that I feel like maintaining that, despite, you know, having like your professional hat on, or like carrying yourselves a certain way. I think like still remembering like your character and like still allowing that to flourish in the ways that you want it to.
Um,
Okay.
I'm gonna ask a question because it is PCN season and I love PCN and I always think the themes of this space but also PCN are a good way to guide. But who or what is your Paragunan? Like what inspires you and what inspires the kind of leader that you want to be and the leader that you are? And what is the pamana that you want to lead in this space?
Freaking PCN director. Get a load of this guy. But yeah, I mean, if you didn't hear already, like in my speech, like I really talked about how it was this light that, you know, drew me into Kasamahan and like kept me coming back, even through everything that I faced, even, you know, when even this organization was like difficult to manage like that, like kept me grounded. And I think it's not just like a physical thing, it's like manifested in people that I've met in this space. And I think when I think of my Paragunan, that's what comes to mind. I also talked about this in like the little Sinkill circle that we had, but my muses are the people who I've served with these past 3 years. It's the senior board that I've seen for 3 years. It is the generations that came before it, and it is the people who are here now. You all are the reason why I'm standing here today. You are all the reason why I'm still going, despite everything. And, you know, even if I don't know you that well, or if I only see you through passing, you've left an impact on my life, and I look to you guys for everything. I look to, you know, everything that you've given to this space, and I want to continue that. I think that ties into like the Pamana, the legacy. One conversation I had with an alumni who's from like the class of 97, 87. Sorry, Queen Jug. But something that like I asked him was like, what were your greatest hopes and dreams for this org? And he said that, you know, he hopes that, you know, despite whoever's in this org, despite however it looks, that, you know, the care and the love continues. And I think that's something that I received when I came into this space, you know, that warmth, that love, that light. And I hope that, you know, even after me, that it continues to not only exist in this space, but carry people through, you know, the hardest of times, carry people through, you know, their journeys in undergrad and beyond.
Hello, Dogs. What's your vision for Kasamahan, and how would you create that experience for current and incoming members?
I talked about this a little bit in my platform, but I truly hope that, you know, with all aspects of this organization, that it continues to remain as a home for those who need it, for those who are seeking that, because that's what it was for me when I came in. you don't know, I'm from SoCal. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and so coming into this space, or coming into USF even, like I didn't know anybody coming here. I didn't have any sort of foundation. But then, you know, when I came here, it's like I found people that like have shared the same experiences as me, but also like so different and so I don't know that have like welcomed me with open arms. And you know, I hope that whatever this home looks like, that it continues to bring people in and take care of them in the same way that it's taken care of.
On executive board, there's a big emphasis on collaborating with each other and becoming friends as well, and building not only professional but personal relationships. Since we are also friends with people on our executive board, how do you maintain that balance between your personal and professional relationships, especially when difficult situations may arise or matters where you have to agree to disagree on business-related concerns?
I think it ties into a lot of like what I was talking about within your conversation about like, having your board hat on, but also like, maintaining like your character like throughout all of it. I think, it's only natural that board continues to grow closer together. I think it's something that Chris mentioned, like, whether it be like just planning events or like having like retreat or just, being in like community with one another. It's like only natural that we grow closer to each other and like build those relationships and grow those as we go on here. I know that some of my greatest friends, my greatest inspirations have been people that I've served with. But when it comes to, again, there's a time and a place for everything. And, there's a time for us to be silly and to, be social and like have fun, but there's also times when things need to get done, for the sake of our organization, for its betterment. And I think just establishing that very early on, as we're continuing to grow and like figure out our dynamic as a board. And also, I think it's really important to remember that when there are disagreements or conflicts on board, and like when like decisions are being made that like you may not personally like agree with or advocate for, it's not like it's not a reflection of like how your fellow members feel about you personally, and it's not like a reflection of like your character. It's just all of us using the information that we have and like the experiences that we have and trying to again make the best decisions for our organization as possible. And so I just think it's really important to keep that in mind and make sure when we have to like resolve a conflict that we face it with like, what is the word? We face it like professionally, and we face it respectfully, or like with respect to one another.
You've been in the space for around 3 years now. Is there anything that you would change, or anything that you regret maybe that you wish that you could change now?
Of course. I stress that I'm not perfect. I'm human as well. And, even though I've been on board and I've had all of these great experiences and I've been able to do so much for this org, that there are also so many spaces or like places where I've lacked. I do regret that a lot. I think one instance that comes to mind is when I was in Kappa CD. I was very worried over the summer about like all the responsibilities that came with it, and planning like such big events for the first time that I wasn't able to show up for my co and for my board in the ways that I wanted to, in the ways that they needed it. And that's something that I reflected on come time for like the fall semester, and something that I want to make sure never happens again. And I think those experiences of like regret or feeling like I could have done more. You know, rather than letting it bring me down, it really just drives me to be better in some aspect, like every single day, and like want to be that person that, you know, is there for you in the ways that you can.
I will ask one last question. You mentioned during your speech that it doesn't need to be. And that makes me want to ask you as well, why do you want it to be you? And what do you think makes this space so special for everybody? I know you talked about it, but
I think the hardest thing that I've been grappling with this season and just like my experience here in general is that I've had so many people telling me that they expect me to take on this position. And while, you know, I'm very grateful that they see me in that light, it took me a really long time to believe that myself. And, you know, I say that it doesn't have to be me because there's clearly so many of you that care for this organization. That's why you ran in some capacity, or you showed up for the people in your life that are running, or you just showed up for your Casamas. But I, you know, despite what people have told me, you know, you're gonna run for this position, right? Or like, I don't see anybody doing it but you. That's like some of the loudest voices I've heard in my head. But despite all of that, I come here and I've served for 3 years because I want to be here. Because I love this space in, you know, ways that I cannot fully put into words. But I come back to this space, you know, despite everything that, you know, I've gone through in this space, despite all the hardships, despite all of the pain. I come back here because I love being here and I love you guys. And yeah, I think being executive director specifically is like a way for me to give back to the space that has given so much to me and give back to the people that have raised me into the person that I am today. And so, you know, even if everybody voted no today, even if, you know, I didn't do enough to convince you, I know that I would still love this org, you know, in the same way that I loved it before I joined board. And I would still love this org in the same way that I've served in the past 3 years, in the same way I've been a lead, the same way I have shown up for this space. But I truly mean it when I say this org has expanded my capacity to love and has made me, you know, into the